The Canada Revenue Agency has warned some people they might not have met the criteria for CERB and would have to repay.
Many Canadians are now being asked to repay the money that they were given during this pandemic. So, as I've discussed countless times in the past, this is around the CERB, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, where basically if you lost your job due to COVID-19 or had to stay home, take care of kids, or you just were not able to work, then you could apply for the CERB, which is $2,000 a month for the extent of the pandemic, which has now been folded into unemployment insurance. Now, if you weren't working before the CERB, you couldn't apply. So this was never a universal basic income, but it was at least something that most Canadians were able to apply for and get. But now, many Canadians are receiving a letter telling them to repay the money back that they were given. So let me give you details on that. First, CBC headline here. CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, sent 441,000 education letters to Canadians who may have to repay CERB benefits. So 441,000 amounts to about 5% of the people that actually received the CERB. So it's not a large number, but it's still a large number of people that are being told to pay back thousands of dollars that they needed during this pandemic. Now, this is largely targeting people who were self-employed. So there is some confusion around the requirements that were needed to apply for the CERB, but this confusion was pushed out there by the CRA themselves, which they now admit to. I'll get to more of that on that in a second here. But as CBC writes, described as education letters by a CRA spokesperson, the letters were sent to those for whom the agency said it was unable to confirm employment and or self-employment income of at least $5,000 in 2019 or in the 12 months prior to the date of their application, one of the key criteria for the CERB program. Now, as I've discussed in the past, including when this was launched, this cut out people who were in extreme poverty. Anybody who didn't make $5,000 in the past 12 months were not able to apply for this. Recent graduates also impacted by this. I've had Greg Sibley on my show a couple of times from the Don't Forget Students group discussing this issue where they were left out of this program and left out of the student program. So this impacted a lot of people. And I'm going to get to an example in a minute here, actually, from a student who was even told that once the student benefit came through, he was told by the CRA to stay with the CERB. And now he's being told to pay back the money he was given. So before I get to that story, I want to play for you here this piece from CBC's The National that gives you a quick overview of what's going on here and a few of the people that were impacted by this.
We're serious when we said we would be there for people.
Again today, the Prime Minister tried to reassure hundreds of thousands of Canadians they don't have to pay back their pandemic benefits, at least not yet.
We didn't deliver support to millions of Canadians who needed it just to claw it back at Christmas.
The Canada Revenue Agency has warned some people they might not have met the criteria for CERB and would have to repay. But now, a twist.
At the beginning, when people were phoning, unfortunately, there was a mistake made.
He says for 3 weeks, CRA employees had incorrect instructions and gave applicants the wrong information about self-employment income.
Well, obviously, they probably relied on that, and they applied, and now they're being told that they might owe the money. So I think there's a problem there. It needs to be addressed.
Very different from probably any work that you've done before.
Tammy Seed runs a business giving holistic nutrition advice. She says when she first applied, she was given wrong information by 2 different CRA agents.
The second person encouraged me to apply. In fact, using the word, we encourage you to go ahead. I encourage you to go ahead and apply. This is what this program is for. You're the self-employed type of person that we're trying to support.
Now she and her family could have to repay $14,000 in CERB. In a statement tonight, the CRA said the Government of Canada acknowledges that communications on this topic were unclear in the first days after the CERB was launched. This includes both the CERB web pages and the information provided to call center agents. We regret that this lack of consistent clarity led some self-employed individuals to mistakenly apply to the CERB despite being ineligible. Adding people will have time and flexibility to repay.
So this is incredible. The CRA acknowledges that the instructions were unclear. Yet still they're saying, well, don't worry. You don't have to pay it all back now. We'll be flexible. We'll give you time to pay it back. Why do they have to pay it back at all when the CRA themselves were unclear about the instructions and people mistakenly applied, got the money, and are now being told to pay it back? It's ridiculous. If they had just made this CERB universal from the beginning, if it was a universal basic income, there wouldn't be all this bureaucracy. But because it's not universal, there is now all this extra work that has to be done to try and resolve these issues that are only issues because this money was not universal to begin with. Now, let me show you someone else who was impacted by this. University of Ottawa student told to repay $12,000 from CERB says he was given bad info. So this is Alex Koukopoulos among tens of thousands of Canadians who've received government letters advising repayment. Alex Koukopoulos, a third-year student, lost both his part-time job and a summer co-op position with Global Affairs Canada due to the COVID-19 pandemic. When he inquired about applying for the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, he was told by a Canada Revenue Agency agent that as long as he'd made more than $5,000 in 2019, he would qualify. Later, when the Canadian Emergency Student Benefit became available, Koukopoulos said he checked back in with the CRA to see if he should switch streams and was told CERB remained the better option. So this student tried to switch to the student benefit when it was available, was told by the CRA to stay with the CERB, and is now being told by the CRA to pay back all of the money that he received through the CERB. And in fact, he even tried. He argued that when he called the CRA about the letter, he was told he should have applied for the student benefits program. He said he asked if he could pay the difference between the two programs, which would save him $5,000, but he was denied. He's not even being allowed to pay the difference that he would have, because he would have received the student benefit. So he's even trying to meet them halfway here. Hey, can I pay back what I would owe if I took the student benefit and not the CERB? And they're still denying him, forcing him to pay back all the money. This is completely insane. These are people that need the money. There are countless large companies that received a ton of help from the government. The government has absolutely no idea where that money went. Of course, in many cases, it went to CEO pay. It went to stock buybacks. It went to shareholders. This money these people need, this is where the Canadian government is putting their effort in, going after self-employed people, going after students who actually needed the money. Now, a couple of reactions here. Don't forget, students, this is the group I've discussed before. I've had Greg Sibley, who's one of the members of this group, on my show. Don't forget, students, tweets out here. It took months of pressure to push Justin Trudeau from telling us to look for work on farms and fisheries to stepping up with the CESB. The CRA told many of us to take CERB back in April. Students like Alex can't afford to pay for the Prime Minister's mistakes. Absolutely right. And Jagmeet Singh responds here, saying the government has to stop asking people to pay for liberal mistakes, from students to artists, hairdressers to contractors. Hundreds of thousands of people like Alex followed the rules and are being told they have to pay back the CERB they needed to survive. This has to stop. And the Green Party leader has also been vocal about this. Enemy Paul tweeting out, Canadian Greens were the first to sound the alarm bells on the CERB repayments demands. People followed the rules and used the money to put food on the table, provide for their kids, and keep their businesses afloat. CRA can't demand it back. That's a bait and switch. So at the very least, you have the NDP and the Green Party on the side of Canadians here, actually fighting, actually understanding that these are people who followed the rules and are now being told to pay back this money that they simply don't have because that money went to surviving. Meanwhile, massive corporations in Canada completely skating by, taking in all this money and being ignored, while all the focus from the Liberal government right now is on the people that are self-employed and students.